Hey guys, I'm your host, Coin Icarus, and I've got my co-host with me, Nico, aka BitVolt, and he's going to join us in a few minutes. And this is another episode of Simply Bitcoin, a daily weekday show recapping the Bitcoin news, fails, price action, and of course, no shitcoins because after all, it's Simply Bitcoin. All right, guys, let's start with the date, August 5th, 2020. And we are going to hop right in and take a look at our Moody's dashboard. Here we go. All right, we are starting with block height, 642,394. And we're looking at a price of 11,726. And look at that GBTC premium up over 1% from yesterday.
That's crazy, man.
That's pretty crazy, man.
Dude, those guys are making so much money, man. God damn.
Yep.
But yeah, it's another reason why you gotta have your own Bitcoin. You can't be buying that paper Bitcoin. But looks like the Lightning capacity is growing as well. So that's some good news.
Yeah, it's definitely good. I got to get my node back on there. It's too bad I retired it. But you know what? Before we get into the daily fail, let's just give a shout out to our new backgrounds, right? We're stepping up the productions, looking a little better, huh? So just wait. Soon we're going to have the sound effects. Then it's going to be more or less complete. But yeah, definitely looking a lot better. So very cool. Okay, so anyways, on to the daily fail. All right, here we go.
Daily fail it is.
The daily fail is, so this one already had a daily fail, but we're gonna give it to them again because they failed once again. Ledger. Okay, so look, the gist of it is like this. Okay. There's a bunch of Bitcoin forks, okay? And technically, all the apps are supposed to be isolated. But essentially, on the ledger, to make it easy, they were not isolated. And what happened was that, let's say, for example, you were transferring Litecoin using the app. Well, you would think that you're using Litecoin. You'd be using the UX for Litecoin, but you're actually doing a Bitcoin transaction on the Bitcoin mainnet unknowingly. So that's pretty scary stuff. Let's see over here what they said for the summary. The Ledger device exposes Bitcoin mainnet public key and signing functionality outside of the Bitcoin app. It presents misleading transaction confirmation requests indicating the selected app's addresses and amounts when in fact different transactions are being signed. Nico.
Man,
if you ask me, that's some sloppy coding, though, it sounds like.
It is. And what's crazy is that if you keep reading this article, which I'll link down in the description, of course, guys, is, the guy who found out this bug, exposed it to Ledger responsibly a couple months before, because what you usually do when you find a vulnerability like that is you tell the hardware manufacturer before you tell the public. And he did that responsibly, and Ledger failed to respond. So his only method of try to get them to react, to try to patch this, is to expose it publicly, so hopefully Ledger comes out with a new firmware patching this. But this is another reason, guys, why Coldcard and why they've only decided to stick with Bitcoin. And the reason is because it limits the amount of attack vectors, right? And this is just another example of, if you just if every time you add another shitcoin to the list of shitcoins, you're just making the attack vector bigger and bigger, right? Because if you fuck up on one of those, the weakest link in security is always the weakest chain, or something like that, right?
Yeah, well, you know what? And that's also that kind of also brings up the point of, the more complex you make something, the more points of failure you're going to incur, that you're going to have to pay attention to. So it's only natural that eventually they're going to slip up, right? It's so much easier to just simply recycle the code and just use the same thing again, but change a few values. And look, at the end of the day, in some cases that works, but in other cases, another layer of security is required.
Absolutely.
So,
definitely.
All right, I will hand this back to you.
So yeah, man, that's
daily fail, Ledger.
Daily fail, and that's just another fucking reason to buy a Coldcard. They only stick with Bitcoin, and those guys are fucking legit. Definitely go check that shit out. So, guys, it's pretty exciting today on the price action. We got some pretty exciting stuff. Bitcoin made a move of 5%, so it's a pretty big deal. So to kind of recap what I was talking about yesterday, this arrow totally got super fucking lucky. Didn't mean to time it like that, but I guess I think Bitcoin's coming through for us. But yeah, man, it looks like, you know, we got this pump today of 5%. My expectation, guys, right, is that I don't think that it's gonna continue pumping. I think that this is another wave of, remember I told you guys that Bitcoin has this volatility. So the volatility after the big pump is always the biggest, you know? So we had a huge move from 12,000 all the way down to 10,500. And my expectation for this move, you know, it's hitting it looks like it's hitting some resistance at 11,700. I expect it's going to go to the downside, but every single one of these waves are just going to keep getting smaller. And then if, like I said before, if it holds over the 10,500, which is this blue line, I'm expecting a move to the upside. Next upside resistance is going to be 12.5K. So unless this move hits 12.5K, I don't really find it very exciting. Unless this goes under 10.5K, there's nothing to be worried about either, right? So let's move on to the news of the day, guys. And it's some pretty big news. Coin Icarus found this earlier today. He's been on a roll finding the news for the last couple of days. And Coin Icarus, do you want to talk about this?
Okay, yeah. I mean, I can definitely. I mean, look, for me, it was really just because I actually talk with Evan Kaludis and Open Noms pretty often, and in our roundtable chats, and I'm fairly familiar with their work. So, 2 out of those 3 guys, like I know, are hardcore Bitcoiners and work tirelessly to add to Bitcoin. I mean, it is unbelievable the amount of work that these guys are putting in, and the amount of help that, you know, they're giving everybody. So really it's just a huge shout out to them, you know, because they obviously, you know, they won this prize and it's well deserved. And to be honest, these guys are just simply going to put it back into Bitcoin and continue to make it amazing.
Absolutely. And what's a big deal to me, Coin Icarus, and maybe you agree, maybe you disagree, is the fact that the Human Rights Foundation is basically willing to fund the creation of a currency, right?
Yeah.
And you would think that's the exact opposite of what human rights would want to fund, but that just goes to show what the liberties that Bitcoin enables to people, especially in third world countries where they're being held hostage by their country's currency, right? So I think that this is just it's really bullish news, right? And it could definitely, you know, if it wasn't for Coin Icarus finding this earlier today, you know, I wouldn't have run into this, because it's just, you know, it's very Bitcoin-ish, and it's very bullish news in the sense of, like, forget about the price, in the sense that you're finally starting to see, you know, other associations that aren't Bitcoiners starting to basically validate what we've been trying to say for years, right? So that's kind of a big deal.
Bitcoin for the greater good.
Absolutely.
You know? Whether people understand it or not, eventually they will.
Absolutely. And this is just another indication of, you know, people starting to understand the possibilities of a world that, you know, is unhinged from fiat, right? You know, where the government doesn't hold you hostage. So let's move on to the second news article for today. And this is this is a huge deal as well. Not as big of a deal as the previous one, but Square, which is the app that develops, or the company that develops the Cash App, racked in $175 million in Bitcoin revenue Q2. That is fucking huge. And this is the reason, guys, that PayPal decided to get in the game, right?
Yep.
Because PayPal is a public company, and they didn't want to get into the Bitcoin space. Remember, they backed the fucking Facebook project like idiots, right? They didn't want to get into the space because this is like death to them. But now they don't have a choice, right? Because Cash App was always behind Venmo, which is owned by PayPal. And all of a sudden, Cash App adds Bitcoin, doesn't add any other fucking shitcoin, and starts racking it in. And I feel like they're making more money than Coinbase at this point. I have a feeling.
And just to add to what you just said, I think there's a lot of people that don't realize that Visa, you know, people always talk about, oh, Visa and MasterCard, they're eventually going to get in the game. Don't be fooled, people. Visa's already in this game indirectly. They own 20% of Square. So they don't care. You know, like they're getting paid. They're getting paid off of every single Bitcoin anybody buys through Cash App. So
The thing is, man, that's honestly one of, I would say it's kind of like, it's kind of like a deal with the devil, right? In the sense that, because they're beholden to their shareholders, right? And all of a sudden, Bitcoin is making money for them. They don't have a choice. Like, even if it's gonna hurt them in the future, the fact that they're pulling $875 million worth of revenue today because of something Bitcoin related, dude, they have to keep going. And Venmo, Cash App basically forced Venmo's hand now, right?
yep,
So Venmo has to add support for Bitcoin, or it's going to get held behind. And
that's right.
PayPal has to make the shareholders happy because it's a public company. PayPal is.
I
So
think I think I told you about this, but there's like there was a there's quite a few people that I've met that have Cash App that have no idea that they can buy Bitcoin with it. They have Cash App and they've got Bitcoin right there, and it's like I'll sit there and point it out to them, and they're like, "Oh, that's what that is." It's like, yeah, what did you think that was?
that's
What is
funny.
that like?
That's funny. Yeah, dude.
A Bitcoin tab for your health? Actually, it is the Bitcoin tab for your health.
it is for your health. It is for your health if you hold it long enough. So,
Right.
so guys, I was supposed
Yeah.
to come out with Phil's podcast today. I'm running late. I apologize. Today's Phil's day to promote his podcast. Is coming out this week.
Oh yeah. Well, this is our podcast. Tomorrow actually is the podcast with you and me that comes out. So I just actually finished editing it. It will be live tomorrow morning, usually around 10 Eastern. And yeah, you should definitely check it out. We talk about Venezuela. We talk about mining. We talk about shitcoinery. Talk about public perception. We talk about all kinds of fun stuff. So definitely check it out on the Fun with Bitcoin podcast.
Awesome. I know I will. I definitely will. So, guys, don't forget to like and subscribe. Tune in tomorrow if you want simply Bitcoin and no fucking shitcoins. See you guys later.